If you see a brand that's advertising on TV, you know that it's part of a trusted system. You have to be a certain level of business to advertise on TV. Consumer trust is still on TV.
Simon Valcarcel, who looks after two of the UK's most iconic brands, Virgin Media and O2. But what stands out isn't just the scale of the portfolio, it's his philosophy.
Innovation isn't always those new, massive, moonshots. It can just be that incremental looking over the fence and going, I need to do that, I need to do that, and actually we need to catch up.
Over 14 years at O2, he's seen the business reinvent itself time and again, building deep partnerships with agencies and embracing both innovation and the fundamentals of marketing.
What excites you today about the world of marketing?
The things that excite me now are actually the same things that excite me that got me into marketing. Those things don't change as much as people trying to convince you that it changes. It doesn't.
His perspective blends discipline with curiosity and competitiveness with care.
Simon, it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Now, look, you're looking after two of the UK's most iconic brands. I mean, Virgin Media and O2. So how do you define being a marketing leader in an organization that has those type of iconic brands in it?
Yeah, it's interesting, your question, because I honestly don't see myself as a position of looking after two iconic brands. I actually see it less about looking after the brands and more about my role is to look after the people that are looking after the brands. And if you look after the people and you give them a good environment to thrive, the kind of brand honestly looks after itself.
Very striking. So this chimes me all the way back to Mars, where people in marketing also used to work in HR. It's a bit weird. Switched between the two. And the Mars philosophy was, well, it's all people. And what the insights that fire people to buy stuff are also the insights that fire people to do an amazing job for the company and so on. So for me, that came from Mars. Mm-hmm. Where does that perspective come from? Because you're the first person who's immediately jumped to that space.
So where's that come from? I think that's come from my the thing I love the most is to look after people. It's the thing that if it were to all disappear, like I love marketing, I really do, but if it really would all disappear, I could still look after people, I'd be happy. So that comes through in everything that I do. I kind of marry the both. I love all aspects of marketing. I mean, I'm the person that on holiday, I won't read a sort of trashy novel. I'll be reading, the latest sort of marketing leadership book about 12 steps of leadership. Has it changed? Or just really quite practical stuff. And my wife asked me the other day, she said, do you actually put any of that stuff into practice? You read a lot of stuff. And I was like, well, like with all books, sometimes you get a few nuggets. Sometimes you think, bloody hell, that was amazing. Although I must say on holiday, just now, I was reading a nuclear war scenario, which was a slightly different vibe on
Don't implement that one.
No, that was... But I think that's where it comes from. I love looking after people. I love looking after marketing. And so my natural tendency is to have brilliant people in the team that really push me. So actually, your role is, my role is kind of setting that vision and just setting up the conditions for success to make those things happen.
Okay, it sounds great. So you're sitting on holiday, reading your marketing books. And I love that because, of course, theory then applies into practice, whether that's through osmosis or indeed more actively thought through. But the world is shifting around us and it is really moving tectonically from a marketing perspective. What excites you today about the world of marketing?
So I gave this question a bit of thought. So I like to think quite deeply about these kind of things. But where I landed was the things that excite me now are actually the same things that excite me that got me into marketing. So the fact is that market orientation, branding, positioning, segmentation, those things don't change, and they don't. As much as people try and convince you that it changes, it doesn't. What's exciting about marketing is that the pace of change at how you do those things is completely, you go on holiday and you come back 2 weeks later and you genuinely feel like you've missed out and you need to catch up. And it's those kind of things that I always kind of remind myself and the team to say, look, the fundamentals of marketing, they don't change. They shift. It's just new and different ways of doing them. And it gives you a really good tool to kind of cut through the crap a little bit. Say, well, will this help segmentation? Will this help deliver creative? Will this help kind of market, orientate our market? And that's the kind of thing that keeps me grounded. So that's the thing that excites me now. Is actually a thing that has always got me into the industry. But I think really the thing that attracts me is and excites me is just the pace of change. It's relentless, and it
is, isn't it?
keeps me young. Is the best way to describe it.
God, you're right. And it's so true. And I know it's often cliche when people talk about this pace of change. But yet it does feel like in the last 12 months, there's been a whole host of new capability, new technology, new channel fragmentation taking place. How do you see that world evolve, and how important is brands like Virgin Media and O2? How important is it to play a part of that new world order when things like AI search, for example, or other key areas that are evolving?
Yeah, I think it's important as one of two big brands in their individual sector, because I'm very aware of, you don't think about this at the time, but it's only after the fact that you've done something and you'll be on a panel or you'll be at an event and you're just chatting over coffee and they'll go, oh yeah, I saw what O2 did. That influenced what we did, and we started thinking about technology different, or the way you've implemented that particular campaign idea. So I think it's important because it's really your competitive edge as a marketing team is to look within your sector, look outside your sector and go, well, what can we steal with pride? What have others stolen a march on? And so you've just got to keep up with the pack. And actually, what are the things you can properly kind of innovate on? And we work very closely with VCP and MG on our innovation strategy, and they've got a very simple set of objectives that we've kind of implemented. It's across a scale of three things. It's the do, progress, and pioneer. And so do is within your sector, someone else has done it, and so you just need to kind of step up, whatever that is, whether it's immediate innovation, whatever. Progress is looking outside of your industry, looking at adjacent categories to say McDonald's have just innovated with something, whether it's at their tills and whatever. And then we set objectives around kind of doing a couple of those a year. And then the pioneer are the stuff that hasn't happened in marketing before. And so that's, and they're not quite moonshots. They're not like the Red Bull jumping out of space type thing, but they are things that we feel either in the UK or actually anywhere else we think haven't been done before, and that's how we kind of set our innovation agenda. This year we had 4 do's, 2 progresses, and 1 pioneer, and we're pretty much there. And I remember MG being very annoyed the fact that we'd just done this, and then sort of Daisy hit, and they said, "Why didn't you bloody tell us about Daisy?" And I said, "Well, that was just something that we were doing last year. So this is a new year." But it was that I love that approach to innovation because it's so simple and it's so easy to grasp, because innovation isn't always those new massive, moonshots. It can just be that incremental looking over the fence and going, I need to do that, and actually we need to catch up.
That's so good.
I love the do, progress, pioneer framework. We'll come back to Daisy. I love the do, progress, pioneer. We had Pete Markey was on a couple of weeks ago, and he basically said, I will not let any of my competitors be ahead of me on anything. So I'm just going to hold a bit of a mirror up. There's the lovely, it's about the people and I love marketing and so on, but there's also a fighter in there somewhere. So how do those two things coexist? Because you're a competitor, you have to be. You can't be in a job like you've got without not wanting to lose and wanting to win.
So I think it's setting expectations. That's the key thing. You set those out up front, and your team knows the standard, whether that is always looking at our competitors, whether that is in some cases forgetting about our competitors and just thinking, do you know what, our strategy is the one that we think is going to win. So not letting that sort of divert, which is difficult because sometimes you get a strategy that has gone all the way up and is bloody brilliant and is great, and you're really sort of focused. It takes quite a lot of discipline to stay the course because no strategy survives actually being executed. So you do have to be a little bit malleable, but I think it's setting the expectations, because once you as a team or myself have set the expectations to say this is the standard that we adhere to, whether that's creatively, whether that's media. I remember back in the day, one of my first bosses at O2, and she said, we do not miss media deadlines. That is real money. You do whatever you can to make that deadline. Sometimes that means pushing creative back, that means doing something else, but that is the thing that I will get really pissed off about if we miss media and we lose media, because that's real money. And those kind of things, maybe not as harsh words as that, but that really stuck with me. and just set the expectations up front, whether that's for the year, whether that's for the team, whether that's for the behavior. It's a big thing in our team. You know, we have we've had a few issues over my time, and I've kind of learned that. I think Keith Weed's a brilliant quote that sticks with me. He said, "You'd rather have a hole in your team than an arsehole." And that just stuck with me because they can be so disruptive. And so we really work hard on our behaviours, and we call each other out, and we make sure that sort of no problems fester. And I guess that's where that comes from ultimately.
Today's program is brought to you by two fantastic organizations. First up is Studio Space, a leading on-demand marketing agency platform. Studio Space gives marketers complete control over their projects, from matching the right agency to your brief, to managing contracts and invoicing, and even tracking all of your spend data all in the one place. They take care of everything, and it's totally hassle-free. They even guarantee the work. So check out Studio Space today. Our second sponsor is the Marketing Skills Trust, a charity with a mission to make marketing a better place for everyone. They provide grants to help create a more equitable industry and support initiatives that really do drive diversity, inclusion, and create opportunity. The trust has been instrumental in leveling up the marketing skills across the board. And do take a look at their website for more information. Now, let's get on with the show.
I want to talk a little bit about tenure, because you've had a chunk of tenure.
I have.
At O2.
It's 14 years.
14 years. Wow, that's a shift. So, but I think tenure is underrated. I had 2 tenure shifts, and I think that, benefited from that. So how have you made the most of that tenure, and what are some of the pivots along the way? Because it won't have been a straight line thing.
No, it definitely hasn't. I mean, I've lost count of the amount of times that I've almost left, because that happens over 14 years, whether it's restructures, whether it's opportunities that come up, whether it's people leaving that you didn't expect to leave. But the thing that I've loved, or I think is a big benefit of tenure, is you get to really understand your craft at a business where, if you're lucky, you've got a lot of supporters that will push you up, put you on different projects. But it's enabled me to learn the craft of marketing really in my kind of formative years. Yes, I've worked at places before at 14 years. I've changed a lot in 14 years. And my daughter's 14, so that's just an illustration of the amount of change that I've gone through over that time. But being at a business, especially like O2, and now Virgin Media O2, where there was always money for a good idea. It felt like a new business every year. My boss when I started was Shadi Halliwell, and she'd been there 21 years. I remember in my first interview, I was like, what has kept you at this business for 21 years, especially in marketing? I was like, that's a huge tenure. And she just said, every year it feels like a brand new business. There's a new proposition, there's a new challenge, there's a new something, and that has been true over my tenure. And I do review where I am every kind of 6 months or so. And if I'm generally motivated and the projects that I'm working on are good, then that little voice goes back down for 6 months, 6 to 12 months, and then goes back up again. But I've loved working.
Just before the next question, big shout out to Shadi Halliwell, known her for a long while through the Marketing Academy. What great first boss to have in that organisation.
Great first boss. I mean, I remember my interview. So I had my sort of first couple of rounds of interviews. And then Kat Ward-Smith said, right, you have an interview with Bishadi. I said, right, okay, fine. Who's Shadi? She's the head of brand. I said, right, great. So I had my portfolio of work back then. I printed out press ads, and we're looking through and trying to talk about what I do for a job. And she just kind of floated in. Took 2 minutes, looked at me and said, why do you want to work here? I said, well, I explained that O2 is a brand I admired, and I love the music side of it. I love the brand. And she went, yeah, okay, and just walked out again. And I was like, is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing, Kat? And she goes, well, I don't know, have you got any questions for me? I was like, well, no, we've kind of answered all our questions before. And she was like, all right, well, we'll let you know. And then on the way down, I got a call from HR. I said, would you like the job? So I was like, that was great. But it was just so indicative of her style, just to come in and go, yeah, once over, yeah, I think you're about good. And off you go.
Love it.
So talking about 10 years, you guys have had a very long-standing relationship with VCCP.
Yes.
20 years Over 20 years?
It's over 21. So, I mean, the brand is 22 years. So it's 22 years now.
That's quite incredible in that sense. So what do you think makes up a good client agency relationship?
So it is rare. Tenure that long is rare. To survive the onslaught of procurement, I think, and the change in marketing leadership, not so much at O2, actually reflecting on it, because you've had long tenures. I think that's probably had something to do with it. You know, when you have long tenures in marketing, Sally Cowdery was here for a long time, Nina Bibby was here for a long time, Shadi was here for a long time. So I think you get that continuity. But I think, I was kind of reflecting, someone asked me the same question the other day, you know, how have they stayed the course? And the thing that VCP have done brilliantly is they've integrated into our senior leadership like nothing I've ever seen before. So they'll have regular sessions with our CEO now, with Lutz, with Mark Evans before, with Ronan done before. And they really listened and understood the problems. And so when they were coming to the table, they weren't just saying, well, here's the latest marketing campaign. They were saying, oh, this isn't good enough, or we think actually you've got a bit of a gap here and you could develop a proposition. And so I think over the years, the senior leadership, not just in marketing, have really valued their independent perspective and challenge. And what also doesn't go without saying is they're a bloody great agency. I mean, they have churned out some brilliant ads for some brilliant clients. And so I don't think you can have one without the other, because if they just had a great relationship with, you know, senior leadership and then they were awful, they wouldn't have survived. But I think that's ultimately what's kept them going for that long, and that knowledge of the brand. They are a great agency.
And you've done some banging TV, let's be honest, and lots of awards and so on. My impression is that you're very multimodal in your marketing laydown, but still TV is really, really crucial to the engine. Is that fair?
I'd say it's fair. Yeah, completely fair. That's partly to do with our competitor set. You know, they spend very heavily on TV. It is still, you know, one of the best ways to drive that reach very quickly. It is becoming harder and more expensive, as you'd imagine. But it is mainly driven, you know, we are an AV heavy brand. It's funny you start talking about AV now. It's not TV, it's AV, because it goes so many places. Course, but that is changing without a doubt. But TV still has a great effect on people. It is the fastest way to drive fame. You can do it in other ways, in shorter bursts. And also something that we were chatting about the other day around trust. And if you see a brand that's advertising on TV, you know that it's part of a trusted system. You have to be a certain level of business to advertise on TV. Yes, the barriers to entry are absolutely coming down, as ITV will love to put the case studies in front of you. But there is a difference in the channels that you appear on. If we were just a social brand, yes, we would be able to build something there. But when you are in out-of-home, TV, radio, those kind of trusted channels, the mix will change over the years. I have no doubt about the investment levels. But consumer trust is still people still watch the news on TV. People still read newspapers, although less so. And I think it's important for, you know, big trusted brands to show up in those places, as well as broadening out the channel mix so that you're not left behind by the upstarts.
Well, it's really pertinent and true. I think, do you feel that with the likes of TV today, we've got enough targeting capability to really get to your audiences? Or, I mean, are we starting to think about more digital versions of TV, CTV, as well as even think places like a digital version of YouTube now is pipped to be very effective in how it comes across. So how does that channel mix sort of evolve in today's environment, perhaps versus when you first started, which would be a very different kettle of fish?
So it's really interesting you make that point, actually, because linear TV is brilliant for a point of view, which is why things like Love Island, which is the football, Strictly, those kind of things where you kind of have to be there to watch it to be part of that cultural moment, to talk about it on social live, to, you know, wherever you're seeing your mates, you were there when you saw it. So for those moments, TV is still brilliant. A fundamental part of our AV strategy is with Netflix, with Disney, with Amazon, with YouTube. I mean, I think it's about 35% of all YouTube is now viewed on big, you know, flat screen TVs. Don't know how much of that is little kids with,
I certainly do.
their mums and stuff.
I love watching YouTube on TV. Absolutely.
I do,
God,
but it's massive.
so true.
And so that is the landscape that we are moving into. And along with those channels, the targeting capability is pretty endless, because you can just plug it into the wider part of your business.
Exactly.
And you can start.
The attribution is amazing.
Attribution is amazing. And ITVR, I say ITV and Channel 4, those kind of traditional broadcasters, they are changing, but it's slower, the pace of change. They are, Netflix in particular, voracious. I mean, we've got such a strong relationship with Netflix across all facets of our business. You know, with you can add Netflix to your TV, Virgin TV and O2.
Yeah.
We advertise with Netflix on their service, and we also do a lot with their IP in Priority. And so we are having proper long-term discussions about how do we knit all these things together. Whereas with ITV, it's still very much an advertising relationship. With Netflix, with Amazon, with Disney, it's so multifaceted, and it's almost like a joint business plan that also includes not a bit of media, but media on the side of the whole package, which is, for a marketer, is a completely different proposition, because you can just do, there's a lot more there.
How exciting.
It is.
Right.
The most exciting.
Proving your value, like, tremendously.
Yeah, it really, because that's the biggest challenge that I'm always very aware of, is to prove the value of marketing within the organization, because nobody outside marketing cares what the creative looks like, how many likes it's got, engagements, all that kind of stuff. Some will do. Mostly, they care, we've given you this chunk of investment, what has it delivered? And if you cannot prove that it has delivered something that matters to mainly our finance community, I must say, but others, also commercial and whatever, you're all at sea, or you're not included in the conversation as a lever to pull. And that's the constant battle that I have.
So the times, they are changing, whether it's TV or other things, but you're, in my mind, you're a little bit ahead of the curve in that you've been experimenting in the use of AI within your communications. We've talked to people on the show who are voyeurs or using the tools themselves personally, maybe trying to cascade them into their teams, but very few have actually crossed that threshold into using within their creative. Tell us about your journey in that regard.
So, AI, what a wonderful subject. That it's funny how the things you do in your job all of a sudden send you into weird and wonderful places. I spoke on AI at the ISBA Lead conference last year. I was not prepared for A, the size of the venue, or B, the audience was full of like MPs and government and as well. And I was
know
thinking,
your audience.
Honestly, I really went into, and also I was wearing something very casual like this. I said, do you not want to sort of get dressed up? So I didn't really notice this thing. Anyway, so I was talking about exactly that point. And then somebody from, so Stephen from the Advertising Association came and said, well, we're putting together this working group with government. We'd love you to be on it. And I was thinking, my background is not in tech or AI, or, you know, it's a deep passion of mine. I'll talk about my journey in a minute. But it's funny how it just sends you in weird ways that you didn't think were happening. So that's now part of my journey, that I'm working with on a government working group, advising sort of AI.
Well, that's rather impressive, if I may say so.
Well,
yeah.
it is, but honestly, you look around and you think, well, how the bloody hell did I get here? Of which I will get to that point in a minute. Also, you realise that when you get onto these groups, and it's the same when you go through your own sort of career, once you get there, you look around and you think, well, actually, they're just sort of normal people with normal stresses and strains. It's just different. But when you're looking up, you think, oh, bloody hell, what a job they do, and well, one day maybe, and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, back to your point, back to your question. So my journey started with, it's a blog that I read, Tim Urban's blog. It's called Wait Not Why. And it's bloody brilliant. Pretty much any subject which you can think of, he goes deep and illustrates them with stick animations. So it's very easy, very digestible, but he goes deep. And I read his blog a lot. And all of a sudden, there was this, I came across a blog on the future of AI. And like, it went deep. It went into the history. It started with an ink printer will take over the world. And I was like, what's he talking about? He said, by the end of this blog, you'll believe that is a future that could happen.
Good hook.
Yeah. And I was like, right, I'm in. And believe me, this blog post probably took about 2 hours to read, 2 parts. And it's brilliant. But it goes right back to the history of how it came about, all the various terms, and then into the various different researchers on where the future will go. So AI for good, AI for it's going to cure all human ills, it's going to elevate humans, it's going to be the end of humans, and essentially the crux where he used the example of the printer printing postcards, and in the AI world, if its mission is to just print as many postcards as possible, as the AI gets better and better and better, it will consume more and more resources until humans are a resource. And that was one way that he went down to go, that's the negative side. And I thought, bloody hell, I hadn't seen any of this. Like, what is it? This is just before ChatGPT kind of came out, saying, what bloody hell is this? I'm going to go a bit deeper. And then I read Max Tegmark's Life 3.0 book, which is fascinating. Basically a version of that blog, but deeper. A little bit techie in one chapter about how it actually works. He says you can skip if you, but I kind of went through. And at the end, he basically says, or posits the question, what kind of future do you want to be part of? This is not something that will be done to you. You have autonomy in how you shape this, whether it's in your personal life, whether it is in your professional life, you will be able to make decisions on this. And so that book, and I recommend it to as many people as possible, it's such a good kind of grounding on AI. And then from that point, I thought, well, I've kind of got my theory, a bit like driving, learn to drive. You've got your theory test, and then you've just got to go and start driving. You've got to get in a car, hopefully with someone. It's my dad and my mum at that point, and then they quickly got out and got me lessons. But then I just found some kindred spirits at VCP and just started learning together, learning by doing, because I'm a big believer that you can watch a training course and you go, oh, that's great. Unless you apply that, you either lose it or it just doesn't go in. And so we started to do very kind of small proof of concepts, whether that was in image generation at the time or copy checking was another, that's a big problem. And I was really rooted in throw problems at it, don't throw technology at it. Because if you've got a problem that you can keep in your mind, and that, for example, copy checking was one really big problem for us across the business. Could we give people tools to help be more kind of on brand, tone of voice? We also had a blue character that was in our advertising at the time, this little blue robot. So could we,
remember that well, yeah.
Could we cut down the sort of production? It's expensive to make, all that kind of stuff. And we just played with the technology. The best way I can describe is playing by doing. And we had some successes, we had some mistakes, but we were learning all along. And fast forward to today, where I'm on a UK government,
isn't it mad?
Working, which is mad, but it's
so many professions where you can sort of weave a path from a blog post to being on a government panel, or indeed just manifesting your work with them and so on. Yeah, brilliant story.
I love the thought that you said that it's not something that's going to be done to you, and that you've got autonomy, and it's sort of as what you've done in being playful, being able to get with the tools, is you've sort of helped to carve out and empower yourself to be at the cutting edge of all of this. But I love your perspective, given that you're sitting on this government working group as well.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many theories that sit out there over the next 5 years and what it holds, and particularly from careers right through to the formation of industries or lack thereof, or who's indeed going to be in charge of countries in the world, even to that degree. We won't go that far, but particularly from a marketing lens, I mean, how do you see this evolving over like a 3 to 5 year horizon here? I mean, are we all not going to have jobs? Are we going to continue to do so? How does it look to you?
So I find it very useful to not talk about humanity, because it very quickly gets existential and you think, bloody hell, how can I even possibly contemplate that? So I very much focus it to marketing and marketers, because that really helps me. I know it really does help, and partly because it is, there are many researchers out there that have got a huge level of background and they know where it's going. So marketing is the thing where I stick, and I always like to look back to go forward. So if you think about the last 5 years, the proliferation of digital channels has pretty much reached it's always going to move, but the traditional channels alongside with the kind of the social channels, really, they've kind of reached a level where they're relatively mature. Who knows? There may be a new TikTok coming up. I mean, that's the great thing about marketing. You never know. But I think marketers have generally got a good handle on that overall. I think the fundamental shift that AI will do, mainly to the kind of the marketing process, is that it will take out all those low value jobs and roles. Maybe not jobs, roles. I'll get to the jobs point in a minute. All those kind of tasks, actually below value tasks. And so the model undoubtedly is going to change, because no longer will it take a couple of days to do something. You'll be able to do it in sort of 5 to 10 minutes.
Yep.
The thing that I firmly believe is that it will elevate people in their jobs. So it will help people get to where they need to quicker. But it will really put a value on the thing that actually makes us uniquely human, like curation, curiosity, connecting different ideas. And it will free people from kind of the drudgery, I guess, of having to pull together all these spreadsheets, all these things. And I really hope it will give people more the space to do that. And so from an agency point of view, the things that they probably started out on, their creativity, their curation, judging what's funny, is that the right shot for landing things? That's what's going to be really valued. And critical thinking is going to be such an important skill, alongside with you need to just be a fay with how to use these AI tools. Otherwise you will get left behind. And I properly believe those are the people that will lose their jobs. It won't be the people that combine their skills with smart AI use. They'll be the people that don't use it, without a doubt.
There's going to be less jobs, though, in the main, in the way how it kind of transpires.
I think different jobs. I think different jobs,
Okay.
and that's the exciting bit, because every new revolution comes along over history, and the printing press, for example, we're going to lose jobs. Industrial revolution, we're going to lose jobs. Jobs just change, and I really hope that those entry level jobs are now much higher order, and they're not about back in the day I was stuffing envelopes, making cups of tea, and just kind of watching people. I think it will still be that, but it will be what the equivalent is on AI. Right, here's a load of tasks, just go and do them, and then critically evaluate what you get back, and give me a point of view. And in fact, VCP, that's the thing they're really investing in, is that critical thinking. That's a big part of their kind of training programs. Critical
Agencies definitely need to evolve. If ever there was a sort of a model that is potentially at risk.
Yeah.
I know you're a big DI proponent as well. So I'm actually going to ask a question about, what does AI mean for DI? Is it a leveler up, or is it the risk of greater separation and worsening?
It's the biggest challenge, or the biggest thing to be aware of, are your own biases, full stop. So that applies not just in AI, but across everything. But actually, what biases have been built into the training data, and being aware of them. So I was listening to a talk. I was at ISBA's AI Innovation Day today, and again, I was talking about Daisy. It seems to be a constant roadshow of things. And I was listening to one of the speakers talk about this exact point. And they've created something in the background that almost gets rid of the biases in image generation. So the example she used was you type in, with no other prompt, give me a picture of a CEO. And like 98% of the images that came back were white, middle-aged men. And then with a bit of prompting, you can get that down a little bit. And I think the actual figure in real life is about 78%. So it's not massively off, but it's still it's reinforcing that bias. And so they came up with a tool that effectively adds a prompt before the prompt that you don't have to write yourself, because you have to be aware of your own biases and you have to be aware of lots of things. And as soon as you start prompting these models to go a certain way, it sometimes goes a little bit too hard in one way. But it's a real risk. And that's why the training isn't really about the tools and how to use them. It's about you critically evaluating the output. What training data? What are we trying to solve for? If we are putting humans in our advertising, which at O2 we're having a big debate over that. We don't feature as many people in our advertising as, say, the beauty industry. But it's still a thing of, well, we're a very human brand. When we have featured people, they are real people. So what does that look like in an age of AI? We have a huge DE&I program and objectives, and VCP and MG, they all have lots of brilliant policies. And so we're at a really good place when we actually do it ourselves. When you hand that over to the models, that's a very big risk. And without that knowledge or that kind of understanding of those biases, there is a big risk there.
It's so true. I love the way you framed that. And actually that smart tech of help, what gets pre-programmed in before someone even prompts helps people to kind of, decipher and get a more unbiased result.
Again,
it's novel.
Yeah,
it's
but also
like
it's throwing a problem at tech. That's a problem. How do you solve for it? As opposed to, again, back to the point of you have autonomy over this stuff. So yes, the APIs from OpenAI or Google will allow you to build on top of that. But in your own job, that's a problem. Right, we can solve for that, and then tell people about it, and then that's how everyone levels up, and that's how the industry moves forward. And I can see in beauty, for example, the example they talked about yesterday, that's a really big issue for them because they feature so many models.
Exactly. Simon, it after what is and is currently a great career, there undoubtedly will be things that have not gone your way, and often we learn more from the things that don't go away as the things that do. I wondered if you've had any reflections of times when things haven't gotten your way and what you've learned from them.
I mean, there's many, many. I think I'll probably point to a time quite early in my career, actually, and it's not necessarily something that didn't go. I suppose it didn't go my way because it wasn't what I wanted. That's probably the best way to describe it. So I was relatively early on in my career at O2. And I was one of two advertising managers. And the other advertising manager clearly had more experience, had a direct report, was being pulled into all the sort of the big projects. And I felt like I was getting, shoved to one side and whatever. So things really were not sort of going my way. And so I became quite obsessed with the meetings I wasn't in, the projects I wasn't on, what work I wasn't doing, all those kind of things. And I remember I had a mentor at the time, unloaded much in the way I'm doing to you now. It's not fair, and I should be doing this, and why is he doing this, and all that kind of stuff. And he said, can I stop you there? You've just spent the last 30 minutes talking about someone else and things you're not doing. How much energy are you wasting by focusing on the stuff that you can't control? Someone else? Why don't you just focus on the stuff that you are doing? And although it wasn't one thing that kind of went horrifically wrong, there have been some of those things too, it just flicked a switch in my mind. And from that point on, I thought, I'm almost not going to worry about anyone else, even externally from other people doing different jobs and moving on and progressing and bouncing around. And it really did flick a bit of a switch in my mind that it doesn't really matter what other people are doing. No one really cares. And just focus on what I was doing. And my progress really then began to shift because it just changed my mindset completely. So although it's not one big crashing thing and went wrong, it was a point in my career that was a turning point.
I couldn't help but, as you to say, my interest got spiked when you said, well, no one else really does care.
No one else cares. Like, no one else cares.
And yet we place so much emphasis on our careers, on other people, what they're doing and trying to keep up with our peer group. Yeah. And I said,
and do you know what? Going back to Tim Urban's blog, that was the first thing I got from him. He's written a brilliant blog post called Tame Your Mammoth. And its whole thing is that, it goes back to sort of 50,000 years where you had to belong to be in a tribe. And if you weren't in a tribe, you'd basically die. And so you really care what other people thought of you, because if they liked you, you'd be in the tribe. If they didn't, then you'd be cast out. And so this whole post is basically about taming that sort of 50,000-year-old mammoth, and that little voice of like, I think they care about what I wear, what I said. Oh God, is that embarrassing? And it's just, I read it about once a month just to remind myself that no one really cares what you're thinking. No one really cares. And it's a really good grounding.
I love it.
So I'm curious about where's next for you, not necessarily in terms of moving roles, of course, but what drives you? What's your ambitions for the future?
To be happy. That is honestly my ambition for the future. I've had a couple of moments over my life where I probably haven't been happy, or things have happened that has caused me to reflect on my life, not completely being happy. It was a health scare, and basically I thought I was having a heart attack. I wasn't. I punctured my lung spontaneously, which I didn't know was a thing.
It still doesn't sound very good, by the way.
No, it's really not a good thing. I'll tell you the story quickly. So I was getting ready for a meeting with Nina, actually, big, meeting. And I also started having sort of these chest pains, and Daz, the ECD at the time, said, "Size, chest pains are not good." At that point, Nina came in and was like, "Right," meeting started. But it felt better when I sat down. And so I thought, well, I'll just continue for a bit, see how it goes. I was getting hotter and started stripping off. And she's like, "You're right." So yeah, I'm fine. Anyway, I left pretty quickly, went to the tube, and the pain in my chest just got worse and worse and worse. I thought, I think I'm in trouble here. So I did something that any respecting person would do. I called my wife, and I remember it because I was sitting on the side of King's Cross on the curb, sort of crying, going, I think I'm having a heart attack. She said, "What are you bloody ringing me for? Ring the ambulance." I didn't actually. I got a taxi home. Stupid. I don't know why I did. I just got a taxi home. I didn't want to be in a hospital in London. So she didn't quite rip strips off me, but she did later. And eventually the doctor came around and said, "You're not having a heart attack. You punctured your lung." I was like, "Well, how? I haven't been in an accident." He said, "Yeah, it can just happen." I was like, what do you mean it can happen? He said, "Well, it normally happens in smokers. Do you smoke?" I said, "No." "You're not a teenager." I was like, "I'm definitely not a teenager." "Do you scuba dive?" I was like, "Nope." "Do you smoke crack cocaine?" I was like, "Nope, I don't do any of those 4 things." He said, "Well, it can just happen." So the pain you were feeling was as you were breathing in, your lung was getting smaller because of the hole in it, and it was basically tearing it away. But in those moments, I was thinking, why do I eat so much pizza? I should have been more healthy. Why don't I exercise? What am I doing in my job? And at that point, and I'm not suggesting everybody has a health scare, although it does kick you up the arse massively. And I just thought, do you know what? Being happy is the most important thing, whether that's in your environment at work, the people that you work with, the projects, your family, your friends. And that's honestly my ambition. And, I talked to some other CMOs and I said, "What's your ambition?" Was just to be happy. As a result of that, lots of great things can happen. But some people, I want to be CEO. I don't want to be a CEO. I think that life doesn't look like a fun life. I know quite a few. It doesn't look fun. Like it doesn't. Some people that drives them. For me, it doesn't look fun. And so the ambitions are to be happy. And what makes me happy is marketing, looking after the team, doing projects that I'm really interested in, and see where it goes. Not really too fussed.
Thanks for sharing that story, Si. That's heavy. That's wow. But like you say, philosophically better off for it, and like you as you say, you made changes as a consequence. Yeah. You know what I reflect on as you describe, that future, and I'm so glad you're in a better place, is that all the social media and the pressures of society and our daily grind of life just makes people navigate towards this endless hustle. Yeah. Of and it's all gleaned on the big jazzy Ferraris and the big houses and all that materialism that plays out. And I go, geez, what are we training our next generation for and to be? And then, by the way, they're probably sitting in the most uncertain, ambiguous moment in their careers where no jobs for life, got exceptions to the rule, and how you describe what you've done. But, how would you advise someone early stage of their careers today when, hustle culture, materialism, yet ambiguity and uncertainty. How does that all match together, and how do you make sense of that for someone?
So I've had that exact same conversation with my daughter. She's 14.
Yeah.
She's going to year 10, picking her options. And she loves hair and makeup. And so I think actually having a skill that somebody values is going to be really valuable in the future, whether that is a manual skill like something like plumbing, building, those kind of things, or hair and makeup in my daughter's case. But I honestly struggle with giving advice to young people coming into particularly our industry now, because I don't know what it will look like. And so the only advice I give, and I mentor a few younger people, is to be curious, to try and make yourself irreplaceable in the beginning. And it's a very difficult thing to say, but what does that mean? Well, it means that what makes you brilliant, whether that is your critical thinking, whether that is your curiosity, your creativity, whatever that may be, marry that with using the tools of the day brilliantly and leaning into it. So somebody asks you in your interview, did you use AI for this interview? You go, yeah, absolutely. Why would you not? And this is the way I did it. This is how I went back and forth going, I'm not sure this was the right approach. This is some of my experience. Can you help me word it differently? Really lean into that, because there are still going to be jobs there, but the field has just jumped. Because when you have got effectively a model, you can go, here's the job description for this entry-level job. Here's my CV. Can you rewrite it for me? And actually, can you give me an interview guide for if I get a really difficult question on give me a pen, sell it type thing. And all of a sudden, you've got 5 or 6 different examples for that. If you are not doing that, you are going to be left behind. So the advice I give to people wanting to get into marketing is read as much as you can, because if you read a book, it'll be a lot better than a cursory column from someone giving a top level kind of clickbaity type view. And that will give you a much deeper understanding of the subject that you're going into. It'll give you something to talk about. And ultimately, people want people in the teams that are interesting, that you can sit with, that can be natural with clients, or can talk at various different, events. So that's what I'd say.
Simon, thank you. I think we've just run out of time, but it's been a wonderful pleasure to have you on here today. Thank you for sharing your insights.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
It's been a deep one, but in a good way.
Yeah.
Very good way. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you.